Today, our discussion will be of the cloud puzzle, putting the pieces together. And joining me for that discussion is Paul Puckett, who's the director of the Enterprise Cloud Management Office at the Department of the Army and is the principal advisor to the CIO on the Army's cloud strategy. And Drew Epperson is the chief architect at Palo Alto Networks Federal. Longer bios are on the web, but in the interest of leaving more time for discussion, we're keeping our intros very brief. But Paul, let's start with you. Tell us about the new Army Enterprise Cloud Management Office. What's the strategy? What was it designed to do, and how's it going?
Absolutely, and thanks for having me, Ann. So the Enterprise Cloud Management Office was born out of a study that the Army commissioned with the Institute for Defense Analysis. And really what the IDA was looking at is the Army's adoption of cloud to date. So some may recall that the Army put out an Army Cloud Strategy back in 2015 that really codified kind of the strategy by which the Army would leverage cloud computing in order to modernize itself. But one of the key kind of aspects at that point in time was the Army leaning into the data center consolidation effort. And so what we saw with a lot of those efforts across the Army is people starting to leverage cloud computing capabilities, but doing so more so in order to close and consolidate data centers. And so a lot of the methodology that the Army was applying at the time was one very, very disconnected, as you can imagine, with the scale of the Army and just the various programs that we have, is kind of the disconnected nature for how they would adopt cloud computing, but also the value of adopting cloud computing. And so what we saw was a lot of cloud first and a lot of lift and shift methodologies. And so what the IDA concluded was that the Army needed to establish a centralized resource that was really all around the necessary skill sets and subject matter expertise that we needed in order to adopt cloud computing to actually gain some efficiencies in how we design and deliver our critical mission services to the Army, and also for us to be able to operationalize our data and be able to discover and use our operational data in real time. And so not just the expertise, but this also comes with some of the core services, if you will, that we typically call the common cloud services that we need to bring to bear. That's really the IT-related aspects for designing and delivering a secure cloud environment to then allow programs to be able to focus on how they're going to optimize their mission within it. And then also some processes that perhaps need to change. As you have already been aware, there's a lot of discussion around accelerating the ATO process. And what I would argue is that our challenges with the ATO process and the risk management framework is more so in how we design and build and field software today. And just all of the custom nuances that people are doing in very one-off ways really becomes a struggle for us to try and standardize and automate that. And so as we start to lean into cloud computing, what processes can we change? And then finally, where in policy or governance, or even just simple awareness with Army senior leaders, do we really need a voice to be able to convey the challenges for adopting cloud computing that leverages it to its greatest ability, and what policies we have standing in the way of that, and then working across the community to thoughtfully dive into the intent behind those policies and see if we can't meet the intent of those policies that doesn't inhibit our adoption of cloud computing. So the Army stood up the ECMO, and I was honored to be selected as the first director of the Enterprise Cloud Management Office. And what we've also been enabled with are a number of resources. There was an effort that they called the night court sessions, but the Army, realizing the investment that they needed to make in modernization, drove the identification of nearly $750 million over the next 4 years for the Army to leverage essentially as seed money in its modernization and innovation journey adopting cloud computing. And so with the establishment of the ECMO, essentially our mission is really to deliver digital overmatch to the United States Army because we see the cloud as a key enabler for how we design and field software, but also how we leverage the value of our data in real time. And we believe that we are in war right now. We're in digital warfare today. And so, quite frankly, we need to take this notion of overmatch and apply it to how we compete and win in the information age. And so, essentially, we need to establish the Army's ability to be stronger, better armed, and more skillful than our adversaries with the use of information technology. And that's why the ECMO exists.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure we will circle back with some more questions on that. Drew, partly as a result of the push to close down the proliferation of data centers, everybody seems to be doing some kind of cloud now. Talk about the advantages and limitations and how to make correct choices about what kind of cloud platform or what kind of cloud structure to consider going to.
Sure. Thanks, Ann. That is I feel like we could spend some time on that. For us, what we've noticed, and which makes a lot of sense, is a lot of our federal partners are looking for things like SaaS applications that can provide them an outcome without having to own the infrastructure in some cases. I think what Paul's talking about a little bit more, though, are native applications residing in, Department of Defense data center, things that primarily you can't get through SaaS applications. So we have seen things like Office 365, for instance, where you can get as a SaaS application, which is a great advancement because now you no longer need to have all of the Exchange servers spread across the infrastructure and data center. So that makes a lot of sense. I think where we're seeing an increased focus and programs like Paul's have become critically important for the mission is now we're starting to see how do we get the applications we need that are mission specific or specific to the Department of Defense, and how do we secure those applications? And something that's really encouraged us on the industry side with our public sector partners is this drive toward common shared services, horizontal service architectures is the fancy word for them. But essentially, how do we build a common infrastructure and then use those common components to drive maybe different outcomes, but maybe 60, 70% of the common services is the same across 4 or 5 different application sets. The reason that's encouraging for us on the security side is that allows us to centralize the security monitoring. So instead of monitoring 18 or 20 different applications across multiple clouds, really what we're talking about doing now in partnership with our public sector partners is finding ways to leverage existing infrastructure that's being shared across multiple application development cycles and driving visibility, compliance control, things like that. And the continuous ATO process, which Paul talked about, is a huge advancement, in my opinion. The idea that you're accrediting the process to develop an application instead of accrediting the application itself, so that pipeline has an accreditation tied to it and that there's control there. It makes it much more transparent, makes it faster, and allows us to get after security in a more holistic and centralized way. So, to your point, I think one of the things is a limitation, and it's more in perspective than it is a cloud limitation. There is an assumption by some people that cloud is just natively more secure than traditional data centers. And I think as, those of us in the industry, we have a responsibility to highlight that cloud offers us the opportunity to provide a better security infrastructure, but natively moving a data center application to a cloud environment doesn't inherently make it more secure. And so I think that there's some terminologies and taxonomies that the industry need to align on, but I also think that cloud, to your point, provides us a great opportunity to optimize how we're doing security on applications inside of the department today.
Okay. Paul, back to when you talk to government people, they focus on the mission and how whatever technology that you're talking about helps deliver the mission. How does moving to the cloud change the way the Army's mission is addressed?
That's a really good question, and it's something that I'm very passionate about, is because my entire career has been based in information technology and on the enterprise IT side of the house. I've always been the guy that's dealing with the IT tech debt and as an enabler to the mission side of the house, but never as like the mission owner. And what I've seen over my years is a lot of people that work in enterprise IT sometimes forget why they exist. The only reason for any enterprise IT capability in the first place is to be an enabler to the mission. And so what I've seen is people that start to build IT in these traditional waterfall methodologies is you see such a long period of time before you actually get to that mission outcome that the enterprise IT world kind of starts to measure themselves on IT excellence. And so with the adoption of cloud computing and cloud technologies is this now transition to our ability to see impacts to the mission faster. And so part of it is kind of unpacking the challenges for getting to those mission outcomes with mission owners and having them realize that a lot of the lag time that they've seen is because of our really challenges with delivering enterprise IT in a repeatable, scalable, and secure manner. And so now with the cloud, we're able to get to that world where we're able to kind of unpack those layers, demonstrate in real time our ability to provision, pre-approved environments with automation for how we're able to then deploy methodologies or services within those environments. And now the mission is actually seeing outcomes so much faster that they're able to see the value that enterprise IT is playing. But then also on the flip side, people that are, ingrained in the world of enterprise IT are able to see the fruits of their labor come and impact the mission in real time. And that's really this notion of DevOps is starting to see kind of these worlds collide where the people responsible for developing capabilities or even the IT operations people responsible for supporting those in operations are now able to see real time how they're impacting the mission. And it's building the community, but it's also then having people identify other choke points that maybe cloud computing isn't the key enabler to, but perhaps it's process or policy that they can work together to essentially, redesign or perhaps deploy in a different way that continues to allow the impact to missions to accelerate.
Okay. Drew, you mentioned and touched on a little bit about how moving to the cloud is thought to be more secure. What kind of protections should agencies consider if they're moving? We've heard a lot about zero trust. We've heard about identity protection. What should agencies consider as they're moving and not perhaps just assume I'm moving to the cloud and so everything's going to be great?
Yeah, and I'm sure Paul can chime in with some of his thoughts on how we adopt cloud and how we map out some of the risks. But there's obviously a risk model and there's a shared responsibility model with clouds, depending on the type of services that you're using in those cloud environments. I think on the industry side, one of the things that we've noticed at Palo Alto Networks is that there are a lot of different groupings of technologies that cloud people and customers using cloud are told to use. And it's beginning to become cumbersome. Traditionally, there was a cloud access security broker, a CASB solution. Then there were cloud workload protection platforms, and they just kept new Gartner quadrants kept evolving and evolving and evolving. And now if you're a department or service CIO, and you sit down and you look at the type of cloud infrastructure you're building, to Paul's point, maybe it's a DevOps infrastructure. There are a lot of different acronyms, terms, quadrants for Gartner that you need to invest in. And I think one of the things that we've tried to do on our side is to look at the basic outcomes that customers need in cloud security and find ways to build holistic platforms. And one of the tenets that we're using there is the cloud providers themselves provide a lot of security infrastructure. There's a lot of security capabilities that exist inside of cloud service providers today. So if it's there, why not use it? Why not integrate into it and pull feeds and telemetry from those? Where there's lacking features or functionalities, there's always something that we can apply there, which is what we've tried to do with the number of acquisitions we've made in that space, combining them all into the common platform that we call Prisma Cloud. But I think to your point, there is this need, I think, to be very transparent and honest inside of the industry right now, that depending on what type of cloud service provider you're operating within, whether it's FedRAMP or not FedRAMP, the types of applications or types of infrastructure you're building, whether it's a DevOps infrastructure or something else, that there may be some different needs. But what we're trying to drive customers to is that right now, as you move to a cloud environment, it's an opportunity to do security right. I think to Paul's point, in legacy data centers, there's been a lot of tech debt. That's not only on the tech side, there's a lot of security debt that exists in data center on-prem infrastructure today. And so we're taking this opportunity to work with customers and suggest that as they move into cloud environments, that there's an opportunity to revitalize and to optimize what they're doing in their security practice. And there may be more efficient and better ways to do that. One of those is, part of your question to Paul and his answer was, simple, repeatable processes. Automation has become king inside of the security industry. And now we're trying to remove, human interaction with things that are highly redundant and manual. Humans tend to make mistakes sometimes on configurations and deployment. So where we can automate and where we can template or formalize something that can be deployed through something like a Terraform or an Ansible or some cloud native capability, that just makes it easier for people to do security, and I think simplifies what they need to do there inside of those cloud environments.
Okay.
And if I could build on that, though, is when Drew talks about our ability to automate, really from a security perspective, that's fundamentally changing the world when we talk about change configuration management. I mean, imagine a world where we could argue that our operational environment, all the way back through our development and integration environments, there's absolutely zero configuration drift between them all, right? And our ability to now, when we talk about accrediting frameworks or accrediting the tests by which that we validate that we are managing risk effectively, our ability to introduce change in a controlled manner, i.e. fielding new services or features or capabilities, our ability to then test and accelerate that into operations is critical, but it also gives security teams true real-time oversight for the configurations within their operational environment. I mean, it's absolutely critical, though, that we do the hard work to be able to get to that place. When we talk about adopting cloud computing and some of the benefits of cloud, I think what a lot of government agencies don't realize is unpacking that technical debt is a critical key enabler for us to adopt cloud in not just a cloud-first methodology, but a cloud-smart methodology, but then also allowing us to build cloud-native applications and services that leverage the key enablers of cloud to their greatest extent possible. And so bringing security teams in, bringing operations teams and development teams in together to be able to automate the configuration of our entire environments really enables everyone. It allows dev to introduce change more often. It gives security kind of a management and oversight of real time to be able to manage risk effectively. But it also gains the confidence of operations that our ability to be able to identify any issues is that like our mean time to recovery is actually going to be reduced over time because we're able to identify issues, be able to remediate those issues in real time, automate that, learn from that, and then hopefully buy down our technical debt over time.
Thank you. I feel like we've just gotten this conversation started, but I see we are already at stop time.